Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2026 Growth Series, a series of webinars focused on topics relating to various growth opportunities across the MENA region. Today's focus is on the rapidly growing opportunity around programmatic digital out-of-home across MENA. Despite the scale of out-of-home across the region, despite the adoption of digital out-of-home across the region, we're still seeing that actually programmatic out-of-home is relatively small in comparison to what we see in other markets. A huge burgeoning opportunity for the MENA region. So today I'm thrilled to introduce you to our panel who are going to be talking about this opportunity and how to leverage it. We have Minaam from WPP Media, Dom from JC Decaux Middle East, Henrietta from MMG Group, and Layan from the Neuron. And so without further ado, I'll hand over to Minaam, who will be our ringleader for the day, talking us through all the opportunities and challenges that surround the programmatic out-of-home in MENA. Feel free to add any questions or thoughts into the chat group, and we'll address those as we go or towards the end of the session. These sessions are recorded as part of the Growth Series, and you can see those on our YouTube channel or on the website probably by the end of this week. So you can share those with your friends, colleagues, and of course your clients, should you see the need to do so. Minaam, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ian. It's really cool to be here. I wasn't originally supposed to lead this, but I know I should blame Yasmin for it or be happy about it because the conversations I'm having right now are super cool, and it's all new to me, and I'm getting much more information than I knew about it. So let's just kick it off, right? So I want to start with you, Dom, right? So let's make it easy in the beginning. For someone like me who doesn't know much about it, what is programmatic digital out-of-home? Give us a quick view on it and some insights around the industry, and then we can just kick it off from there.
Yeah, sure thing. So what is programmatic digital out of home? I think a lot of people can get confused by acronyms, right? And there's lots of TLAs, freedom of acronyms in our world. But in reality, programmatic digital out of home is essentially the transaction of digital out of home in a similar way to how we transact ads online. So loosely speaking, a DSP to SSP connection. And what that really means is that transaction technically uses RTB protocol. So an ad is being displayed on a screen in real time. Or at least that decisioning is in real time. What that really means from a practical perspective is this adds a whole new suite of capabilities to digital out of home. So out of home is one of the greatest context channels that there is. And what this means is you can use as a buyer, let's say, or a planner buyer, you can use the same technology that you use to run your campaigns online. You can use the same or similar audience targeting methodologies, and you can wrap digital out of home into your existing digital media strategy. And what that means is one platform, you can buy multiple media owners alongside other digital channels and utilize real-time decisioning to either target specific audiences, serve the right, most contextual creative at any one time. And it's something that globally has probably been around for about 10 years-ish. I would say with JC Decaux as a group has been around for about 8 years. Started off in the UK where I was based, setting that up. And now for us, at least in the region, we've been live for about a year. But programmatic digital out of home in this region is probably realistically two years old, but really coming into full swing now with a large variety of media owners operating and available through this buying technology.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's a great intro towards what it is, right? And just alluding to what you said, right? It is a no-brainer for a marketeer. They should be using it, right? But we see it's not growing at the pace that we want it to grow. And it's somewhere around $2 million or a few $1 million at this point. Henry, if I want to just ask you this question, right? If I'm a marketeer, why should this platform matter to me? So that's the question I want to bring to you, right? Knowing what Dom just spoke about and gave us a base, what do you think is happening?
Well, I think that, as Dom said, real-time bidding, so the equivalent to what marketeers do with their omni-channel digital plans, is not yet a reality for us in the Middle East. And that's for various reasons. So it is siloed at the moment, and there is a level of friction for those planners and buyers. And that friction comes around the fact that there are various nuances to how pDOOH is traded here. Number one, like I said, it's not real-time bidding. It is mainly PMPs, PGs, and the added layer of complexity that is specific to this region is that we have to have content approval, which is manual, and that's with government entities, etc. So that adds a real layer of friction, like I said, and it means that the seamlessness of having, this omni-channel planning and execution just isn't a reality for us here. Added to which, obviously, programmatic digital is traded on a standard CPM, which outdoor doesn't currently have as a unified metric or currency. So add those together, the creative, the technical friction, and the lack of a unified monetization means that it's growing because it's the last in real life medium, which offers things that digital simply cannot. So the interest is there, of course, for the traditional broadcast aspect of out of home, but also increasingly now because out of home is going down the funnel and driving performance, and marketeers recognize that. So it will grow, but I think the industry as a whole needs to work together to try and standardize the unified trading aspect of it.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that you brought the fact that there's a lot of friction that you still feel as media partners or media owners that's not helping you grow. So I think I want to come to Layan now and see, do you have any other points to add on to the friction bit? Because we spoke about some elements when we were having a discussion earlier with Henry and Dom, but are there any specific things that you are seeing as a media partner beyond what Henry just spoke about that's potentially making it hard to grow the way you would want it to grow?
Yeah. First of all, to start on a positive note, it's great to see how much momentum programmatic digital out of home has been gaining across the region. And conversations like this are exactly what's needed to keep pushing the industry forward. I think that we're here today to discuss not just the opportunity itself, but how we can collectively unlock this and move from potential to actual scale. From a DSP perspective, what we're seeing in MENA is not a lack of potential. It's more a gap between capability and execution, as Henrietta said it quite nicely. We're seeing significant budgets being activated globally across programmatic, but still relatively few campaigns within MENA at the same scale. And from our experience, that's largely driven by a combination of educational and misconceptions, as well as a lack of standardization and measurement as well. At the same time, many major media owners in the region have opened up their inventory to programmatic, and we're seeing agencies that were previously hesitant on programmatic now actively coming to us to explore programmatic. So the demand is clearly building. It's just not translating fully yet. And as a DSP, we sit in the middle of that ecosystem. And we are we're clearly unlocking growth will come down to stronger alignment, better data, more standardization, and true industry-wide collaboration between all partners. And this is something that I think Ian can back me up on that. We're actively working through initiatives like the IAB Programmatic Task Force. And our aim is to focus on creating a clear market framework, bringing all stakeholders onto the same page.
I think we need to be careful here not to let perfect be the enemy of good, right? I think if we kind of look at the facts, the actual total spend, the 2024 spend report, I think is what we're referencing from the IAB. The total spend isn't really the interesting story. The interesting story is the intent and the trajectory. View, one of the major SSPs in the market and globally, who we work with, who Multiply work with, and Elevision and other media owners in the region, they've recently updated their State of the Nation report for 2026, and they've put a Middle East focus this year. They've used the Middle East as a region, and they've got some really interesting stats in that. And one of the things they looked at from people who are doing it, they're kind of doing it in a third. They're doing programmatic out of home in a third of their campaigns, and they're looking to increase that over the next 18 months, according to that report. If you flip that to a global perspective, and again, surveying planners and buyers who have activated programmatic out of home from a global perspective, 99% of those surveyed said they intend in the coming 18 months to invest the same or more. So it is an intent, it is a trend, it isn't going anywhere. I can certainly talk for JC Decaux in the Middle East. We launched on the 10th of April last year, and then obviously we flipped into 2026 this year. Without giving away too many kind of corporate secrets, our brand count in those first 2 months of the year was the same, or was, sorry, 60% of our total brand count in the first year, and we had a stellar first year. So that is the direction of travel. I think that's more of the story, and I think it's a pattern that we see again from that global perspective, that you get a kind of exponential curve from that starting point. Is where marketers want to be, because there is only one direction of travel, and now is the time really to be testing, to be learning, and to be closing that gap between planning and execution that Lily was talking about earlier.
Yeah, no, I think very well. There's a question in the chat right now. So Noel is asking, how important is real-time audience measurement in programmatic digital out of home? I think we touched upon it a little bit, but if anyone wants to jump in, so how important is real-time audience measurement? Which I think is the biggest question, isn't it? But let's go.
I would say it's not. And it's not because of the nature of the channel itself. Out of home is inherently a one-to-many channel. You are never going to be buying one play or one person in a programmatic out of home buy. So having modeled data, having privacy first data is actually a strength of programmatic out of home. You know, there is no PII, there are none of those concerns. We're fully GDPR compliant in an ecosystem. I think that real-time audience data, it's a nice idea, for sure, conceptually, but what's the actual value that it brings? What you want to know really is, if you're buying 1 million impressions, are you reaching 1 million people? Are you reaching them at the right time and in the right place? And if you can do that with model data, which I believe you can, I'm not sure that real-time data element brings that much value.
I would like to.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and agree with Dom on that. And in reality, from a practical perspective, getting near real-time data is expensive. You know, you're asking for huge data pushes that actually don't add that much detail in terms of audience layers, etc. It's more about trends and movements and identifying, you know, where your audiences are, you know, conducting their daily consumer journey, how events, seasonality, etc., impacts traffic, so that, you know, with historical, you can begin to refine your offering and packaging and planning. And I was going to jump on to what Dom was saying as well. Is we don't have to be perfect. We have to be good. But getting better. And I think one size definitely doesn't fit all. You know, when you look at other more mature pDOOH markets, you know, self-serve, a curated packaging is standard. We're very far away from that. And I think maybe to close that gap, like you said, Dom, is that collectively we need to work closely with our DSP partners, and make sure that as an ecosystem we're working all in the same and right direction.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. I think, Dom, from what you're saying in terms of, I just want to debate a little bit around that, right? So the importance of real-time measurement is there. The solution might not be available at this point. So I'll give you a very simple example of how my simple brain would activate certain campaigns at this point, right? If I'm able to activate a campaign based on how the response is coming in. So for example, if I'm working for a brand like Coke and I want to target only digital out of homes around their most sold retail stores, for example, or Adidas, for example, any of those brands, and I can see the footfall being driven based on those ads or not, can potentially help me make certain decisions that I want to do in real time. Again, it's not a perfect solution. And as you mentioned, it doesn't have to be perfect, it has to be good. I just feel there's still some more conversation we can have around this to see how can we make it work versus saying that we should only look at, long-term impressions only at this point.
Do you know what? That's a fantastic way of expanding the question, because and this is what I mean by we probably don't need it. So let me kind of explain how you would kind of address that challenge today. So first of all, I think when we talk about real-time audience measurement in out of home, what we're talking about is what is the impression value based on right now on who's standing around the screen. Now, if you look at the movement patterns of human beings, which we do as out of home professionals, it's absolutely our bread and butter. If you see 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, you know what? It tends to look like 2 o'clock on a Tuesday based on seasonality. So your volume of who you are buying, your simple volume, doesn't change that much. So that real-time measurement doesn't bring any kind of additional value there. Really, that's, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, I would argue. But to your application, absolutely. And that technology exists today. So what you're then talking about is that footfall measurement. And you can absolutely do that today in programmatic out of home. You can overlay, you can measure that footfall increase from the screen when the ad played into the venue using mobile data integrated into the DSP. Yeah. So that is available. And that is done, and that is a great methodology. And we've seen some amazing case studies over the years in various markets. I know Jeep did a great one in the UK, a full omni-channel campaign. And you can watch the tweak, right? So you know that after, say, running the campaign for a week, you know that on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock, let's keep using the same example, this particular screen is driving a higher footfall then into your dealership, into your QSR venue. You can then optimize towards that. And that is one of the fantastic things that you can do in programmatic out of home that perhaps you can't do in traditional out of home and may not want to do in traditional out of home.
Yeah, 100%.
I think I'll jump in again. I think a movement that we're seeing, certainly in more mature markets, and I am absolutely sure it will land here, is increasingly working in collaboration with, say, retailers, for example, for first-party data, loyalty, and even CRM data, if available, to be input and layered above, mobile data, for example, that identifies movement, but also triggering data and behavioral data like commuters or what have you. So the richness of that data, even if it isn't real-time result data, certainly allows you, like I said, from a probabilistic and deterministic way to increase your ability to tailor and contextualize what you deliver.
100%. I'll go to you, Layan. So when I was when this came into being, programmatic digital out of home, right? There's a lot of demand from the clients. It was new. Everyone's just trying to focus for it, pushing for it. And then kind of died down is what it felt like. But then at that time, you as media partners, media owners started investing a lot behind it, right? So as that kind of brought back some of the lost demand, I would say, is my first question to you, Layan, because you mentioned that you are progressing and some of the positive numbers that you shared. And also, what are the few things that you have done, probably as media owners, that has tried to change the landscape itself? So I'll leave it to you, and then we can move to Henrietta and Dom to talk also.
Yeah, sorry. Do you mind, Minaam, if I circle back to the live data measurement real time? I think it's very important to have that, because we did run, we did a case study on Majid Fatim Carrefour screens with Sensodyne in collaboration with Publicis. And we ran 2 campaigns to demonstrate how programmatic can adapt in real time. to both audience and creative strategies. And it was a very successful campaign, and it kind of proved that platforms such as DSPs and running programmatic campaigns enables smarter allocation, real-time optimization, and consistent measurable outcomes across different campaign strategies. So we were able to use that case study to prove how programmatic, the capabilities of programmatic in retail, and having that live data translated into prominent results to showcase to clients that, whether you're using a programmatic through a DSP or you have real live data, that all translates into overall a strong example of how programmatic enables smarter strategies. And to go back to your question, and I think you were asking if the supply is translated into revenue.
Yeah, and then what have you guys done, or what have been the new news in the market? What have you done to build that supply? Just a few examples would also be cool.
So this is the thing. So we've as a DSP, and this is what I was mentioning. It's an industry-wide collaboration. So we are always trying to also connect, partners such as SSPs with publishers that we are getting asked about from clients and agencies alike. And while many media key owners have taken an important step in opening up their inventory programmatically, there's still hesitation that comes to fully activating it. And so what we're doing as a DSP is we are trying to shed some more light on misconceptions and trying to bridge that gap, and playing on both sides, supply and demand, to get more aligned in execution, education, and expectations. The growth in supply alone will not fully translate into revenue, so we need that push from both ends. And as a DSP, it's our role to get everyone together and push this forward.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Dom?
And I'd also like, sorry.
Go ahead.
The shift now is still stronger in intent than in actual budget movement, and mainly because education, execution, and going back to one of the most important points, standardization across the ecosystem are still catching up. So this is what we're trying to work on as a DSP. Yeah. And we're also, developing features where you can, instead of selecting screens, you can now select audiences, because clients are now asking to buy audiences rather than just screen selection. So this is where we come in as a DSP, trying to also run case studies and partnerships with agencies and clients to showcase capabilities, such as the case that I mentioned earlier.
Perfect.
But I think if we're talking about innovation or supply, which I think where the question started, I can certainly talk about that from a JC Decaux perspective. So globally, when we started in the UK, we are now live with the vast majority of our digital out-of-home inventory in 35, probably more than that now, markets globally. Talk about our region, that Middle East, and to answer the Africa question that I've just seen in the chat as well. When we decided to go programmatic within the region, we launched a sub-brand, JC Decaux Play Plus, that runs through me and my team. And we took all of that, we didn't hold some back. We didn't say, oh, this is too premium, we're not going to put it in. So we launched all of our digital assets across the Middle East for a single point of supply, giving you that scalability. So that's across Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Bahrain, the only programmatic out-of-home supply in KSA, in Saudi. Oman has just gone live with our roadside live format and the airports there. We also have South Africa running through the team, Nigeria coming soon. So for us, it is a huge strategic direction. And this supply demand question, I think, is always quite interesting. And I think as media owners, we need to be accountable for making sure that we have the supply there. One, we shouldn't hold back. We shouldn't be waiting. We should be making ourselves as easy to transact with in the way that the buyer wants to transact with us. So we should be ready and waiting is one. And then also the way that buyer wants to transact. And I think going back to what Henrietta was saying earlier, we do have some challenges in consistency in the market, in the way that media owners, in the way that we, taking accountability, make our inventory available. So what I mean by that is the trading types as well. Is it a flexible PMP? Can you actually turn your campaign on and off as you want? Can you de-risk things, which I think is a really pertinent point at the moment? Absolutely, we lean into that. Other media owners don't, and for good structural reasons. Is programmatic guaranteed available? What data layers do you have? What does reporting look like? And I think consistency is one element of that, but we're trying to push into that as hard as we possibly can. But then that also then goes to the accountability. Now that supply is there and it is scaled across the Middle East and Africa, not every media owner, but it is scaled. I think also we need to push back onto the agency community as well. Programmatic in general as an omnichannel strategy needs to be, or almost always needs to be, agency led, because agencies have the tools, agencies have the expertise, agencies have that omnichannel, that cross-channel, holistic view of a campaign. So I think that's probably the next gap to draw together now that supply really is there.
Yeah.
Valid.
Yeah. Dom, I think I also wanted to, if in areas of innovation, I think me and you discussed this many times before, but we were also talking about, in other mature markets, you have, we're seeing innovation like trigger-based activation and location-based targeting and dynamic creative. And as Henrietta said before, we had some limitations, especially in UAE and MENA regulations. I think, Henrietta, now you have that in Abu Dhabi. That is something that we also, as a DSP, try to look for. So I think also trying to push that, trying to find a way to execute things like trigger-based activations could really showcase the capabilities of programming.
Yeah.
And I think that is possible. And actually, Laura has put a question in the chat. But if trigger-based buying from a case study point of view might encourage more dynamic content approvals, of course we would welcome that. I think the easiest way to approach that subject is to have obviously content approval for a range of executions, which then in near real time can be displayed according to the trigger applied and according to the KPI of the campaign. To answer Laura's questions about standardization, this is absolutely critical for programmatic, obviously, because ultimately we're trying to create seamless multi-market campaigns that can, in an ideal world, be dropped from social into, a bridge banner or digital hoarding, or and that is fundamentally easier in indoor place-based networks because it's a more controlled environment. Obviously, roadside, there are some limitations in terms of how dynamic and what kind of movement, etc., and content is allowed. But fundamentally, yes, there are standards in size and formats that should make it easier to plan and place omni-channel programs in near real time. And that's part of the ambition, is to be able to really speak in programmatic digital language and to kind of deliver in those toolkits that those planners, buyers are so familiar with.
Yeah. Just to summarize some of the points that you guys raised today, right? So for the industry to move forward and for it to move the needle from an investment standpoint, it feels that there are three things that need to be looked at, right? So there's one that you guys mentioned, which Layan mentioned, about education and doing case studies and working with certain partners that showcase the capability of and show the kind of supply that you have in the market to make it happen. And then Dom, your point was also valid around this is more stays with the agencies because they have a bigger view of what's happening around the media plan, so bring it together. So I agree with both of those, but I think one thing that you guys spoke about earlier, which was around friction, and we talked about attribution a little bit, or at least having a singular media currency. And then you guys said that the industry is working towards something like that. And we might not have all the answers today, but I just want to take a little bit of dip into what are the conversations that are happening right now, what it could potentially look like, which partners do we need to bring on board to, let's say, accelerate this? Is it an agency conversation? Is it a client conversation? Is it an industry level combined conversation? I would love to hear a POV on that. So how are we moving towards that progress? So at least people here can hear, and anyone can jump in, please, and see how we move from
Yes.
there.
So I think that from what we've experienced, growth will, as I said before, come stronger if we have collaboration across the entire ecosystem: agencies, media owners, DSPs, SSPs. And what we've seen is collaboration through real-time campaigns and case studies. So I think the trick here is having everyone on board, participating in the programmatic task force, and having this industry-wide collaboration, bringing as many stakeholders as possible, and having those kind of discussions that we're having here today. Those kinds of initiatives really push the industry forward. And I think I'm not really sure because we've had to go back to the standardization issue.
Yes.
Which is one of the biggest challenges. What we've seen as a DSP is because this reports all back into, you can see it translate into our platform when you get your reporting, your end of campaign reporting.
Yeah.
And we've had publishers who have kind of the same screens on the same roads, very close to each other, that have completely different impression multipliers.
Yeah.
And that basically creates a gap. And you can see it in reporting. So this is what kind of challenge we have in reporting this back. So once we do have a unified measurement, I think we will be able to grow the industry even more. I'm not really sure how that, we were discussing this during the programmatic task force last week. I'm not really sure how we can get to that unified measurement. I guess this is also, something that publishers should be discussing, and SSPs as well. But as I said, it's an industry-wide collaboration, and I think eventually we'll be able to get there.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is that we don't have a JIC, a Joint Industry Committee, here in MENA, and that does make it difficult to have a sort of third-party, non-partisan industry body that brings everyone to the table to really move on that standardization. We don't have root, we don't have all the US or the Japan JICs, but it is something that's very high on the agenda with the World Out of Home Organization, and I'm convinced that we will have to move in the right direction for all of our benefit.
100%.
You tend to see kind of two models in let's say more mature programmatic out of home markets, or markets where programmatic out of home makes up a bigger percentage of the pie. Just to give an idea, I guess for some people on the call, some markets are 30, 40, 50% of all out of home spend being programmatic out of home, or digital out of home spend, and they tend to fall into two camps. One, you get the JIC markets, which is the likes of Japan, the likes of UK with Root, the likes of the States with Geopath, and how they are usually come together is when you have a industry body to work on them. So in the UK, you've got Outsmart, the agencies are represented, the media owners are represented. They all chuck money into a pot. I mean, Root is incredibly expensive, but very, very good. And then you get an output. That's not always possible in every single market, and not just in the Middle East. I mean, we have a challenge here in the Middle East and Africa, in that we're not even one country, right? We're a region, and we tend to operate a bit more regionally, perhaps more than some other regions do. So to get to that first step of having a unified industry body is probably quite challenging and quite a long path. But the other model that you see is when there isn't a JIC. And again, Minaam, this goes back to kind of it going on to the buy side. As that market matures, what you will see is the buy side agencies, poster specialists will mark people's homework, right? They will look at that example that Lily gave us earlier of, you've got two media owners, one with perhaps a multiplier that looks right, one that perhaps doesn't look right, or a delta between the two, one that looks good value, one that doesn't. Well, that media owner that doesn't have that perhaps is being a bit generous with their own recording, gets marked out. They don't get the investment, and that kind of brings the market into some sort of order. So you can also have market dynamics that can drive that. I think JIC is preference, absolutely, but is that realistic in the midterm here? It probably isn't.
Gotcha. No, I think it's fair. It might take time to get to that point also, but at least I was happy to hear that there are conversations happening and how serious you guys are about this, which makes more sense because a lot of it, I feel, even though we might debate this a while, that it's an industry-wide agency versus media partner discussion, but at some point, both of them have to come together. Now, the reality is that agencies operate in silos and media partners sometimes work operate in silos. So how do you bring all that together is the biggest question for the industry. So maybe someone has to make that decision. But what you said earlier about the need of the industry will define the future of the industry in terms of the demand and supply coming together at some point and saying, guys, this is not working out. We need to look at an operating model that works, which is super interesting. I want to talk a little bit about innovation now. So what's new and upcoming in the MENA region? It could be an inventory discussion. You can talk about some new things you guys are bringing in. This is your sales pitch, guys. Talk about it. Tell me what's happening in the market, what you're bringing new.
Oh, silence.
Oh.
I can only speak from MMG's perspective, but we're first and foremost a pure out-of-home and digital out-of-home player. And from the programmatic side of things, our goal is very clear. We want to be able to provide the most seamless, frictionless path to purchase from brief to screen, and that intention is very much part of a wider plan to be able to compete for digital budgets. We want to be able to build incremental revenues through competing not with other media owners, because then you're just moving out-of-home budgets from one side to another, but really to be able to improve the sophistication of our trading so that it is really, really curated and easy for our partners to plan and buy.
Yeah, I can a little bit kind of on the innovation stuff, and it's unfortunately from a media owner perspective, the innovation can be quite boring, right? We're almost limited to being the supply partners, particularly in the programmatic ecosystem, because we kind of giving the keys to the buyer and the tech that Lily represents, for example. So for us, it's all about scale. JC Decaux Play Plus is that programmatic sub-brand, now encompasses Africa as well. So like I said, South Africa, Nigeria coming soon. And probably most excitingly for us is what so far this year, like I said, it's the launch of Oman. We haven't actually officially launched it, but it is technically live there. And that will be kind of the story coming from JC Decaux over the next few months and years. Will be more and more supply connected to the same great sell-side tech that we use, that Multiply use, that other people use to put the keys in the buyer's hands. So that's really the direction of travel for us.
Okay.
Sorry, Minaam, can I add to this?
Yes, of course.
So we're actually in terms of innovation introducing AI to our DSP to help clients navigate more seamlessly. I also want to circle back to I think Henrietta, you mentioned this before about the restrictions and having that seamless execution through the platform around creatives, especially with the restrictions that we have. We actually we have a customer success team that are consistently optimizing campaigns in real time. So we're also, we have that added value where we're actually helping clients to connect them to third party companies that will help them with their, because you mentioned something about the logo being black and white now in Abu Dhabi, and this is something that brands should be applying. We can connect you to companies like Responsive Ads that can basically optimize your ads in real time. So we're trying to give that extra support to our clients as a DSP. It's our role to do that. yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
also
think with the evolution of AI, I think, dynamic content optimization or adaptation is going to be very easy. It's not so much changing the content or even getting it approved. I think it's yet another bit of friction, especially in pDOOH for international brands that
can't really.
may push back.
Yeah,
they may
of
push
course,
back.
because they have guidelines. I understand, but we're trying, to make it, give that extra support, that extra leg to stand on, whether it's resizing your ads or, changing to fit the regulations.
All right, we've been talking for a while. Let's go towards the close now. So I think open discussion in terms of what does the future look like? What do the next few years look like in your mind? It could be something that you already know or something that you envision. Just go ahead, tell us what the digital programmatic out of home future looks like in the next few years. Envision it. Come on, do it.
So
I think that the story is not will it grow. I think pDOOH we've seen is gathering momentum and it will, of course, grow. It's whether the industry infrastructure can really keep up and really make that growth sustainable, because the expectations from the buy side are only going to increase in the direction of a digital buy. So I think, like I said, I think we all know this is nothing new, but I think as an ecosystem, we just need to make sure that the infrastructure is robust enough to make sure that we get an increased share of the marketing pie.
Yeah.
I guess kind of two streams, I guess, in programmatic out of home trends in the region. And one is this kind of global community, which may be based here or based elsewhere. And one is the kind of local community. So from that kind of global perspective, there's two obvious routes, right? There's import and there's export for the region, if you like. So brands coming in and advertising here and brands going out from here and advertising elsewhere. And I spend a lot of my time, certainly internally, talking about that import side of things. That is only going to grow. It's already for us pretty large, and the majority of our revenue programmatically and sustainable, and that will continue. But the bit I don't talk about enough, which is probably more relevant for the people on this call, is also that export element. So I think more and more agencies, buyers, brands based here in the Middle East, but trying to reach other markets like the UK, US, Germany, mainland China, Netherlands, wherever it may be. Programmatic out of home, one of the great things about it is the way you can scale easily and you can scale globally. And there is a lot of investment going out from the region. So I think that will be a massive trend. And then I think that kind of local side of things, if you like, it is probably maybe more interesting. And I think we'll see a few key trends with that. One, the omnichannel approach that we've talked about, but omnichannel not for the point of omnichannel, but omnichannel for the point of adding accountability to heritage channels. So Minaam, earlier you talked about footfall tracking. That's one way of accountability. What is your re-exposed CTR on a mobile campaign with out of home? How are you applying those audiences cross channels? So I think from a kind of tech and platform perspective, that will definitely be a trend that's coming, as we've seen in other markets. DCO, dynamic content, that message changing alongside the buy based on contextual conditions. That I think will become more and more present in the market. Obviously, there are some structural challenges around that that we don't know how we're going to overcome yet, but we absolutely will. But I think what's going to be very interesting, having not been in this market for so long, is actually the unknown. That's really what I'm excited about. So what we know about this region is it latches onto ideas. It moves quickly when things are going. And that's what I'm really excited about. So I think we're still locally playing catch up with this global picture. But I would bet anything that in 2 years' time, it's going to be level pegging. And this is where the innovation will be from. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Layan?
Yeah, thank you, Dom. Always excited to see you talk about programmatic. The opportunity now lies in bringing greater consistency and standardization, as we mentioned many times before. and how that data is structured and activated across markets. That will enable campaigns to scale more effectively and deliver more comparable, measurable outcomes. Looking ahead, the roadmap is clearly centered around more unified measurement frameworks, stronger audience definitions, more education, and greater alignment across the ecosystem. As a DSP, we're actively contributing to this, both through how we integrate and activate audience data within our platform and through the industry. And ultimately, this is what will unlock the next phase of growth for programmatic, and allow it to operate as a fully driven, data-driven channel within the omnichannel mix. As I started with, I think the biggest shift is moving away from treating out of home as a standalone branding channel and integrating that properly into the omnichannel mix, where it helps reach the right audience with the right message at the right time through programmatic activations.
Yeah, Layan,
Perfect.
I think you kind of summarized it perfectly. In other words, it's how do we give out of home its proper attribution?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately against the omni-channel mix. I think out of home still isn't represented as accurately, I think, in terms of attribution, and I think we all want to work towards improving that.
Perfect. All right. So just last, if you have an industry listening to you right now, just one sentence, you want to give them the vibes outside to see this coming back to you in positivity. Say whatever you want to say, one sentence each, and then we close it. Let's go with Dom first. What do you want to tell the people that are listening to you right now?
Well, I'm going to caveat it slightly. If you haven't already started, start now, or you will be left behind.
Start what?
Programmatic.
I'm kidding. All right, cool. Layan, over to you.
So I hope we can have more of these conversations. And as an industry, we need to collaborate, particularly around, having an industry-wide collaboration, addressing misconceptions. And, the opportunity for programmatic in MENA is substantial. Yeah. So get on the train, as Dom just said.
Perfect. Henrietta, last words.
Yeah. So thanks for hosting IAB MENA. This is a great session. I think my last words would really be about making our ecosystem something that digital traders, operators can really work at scale.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for having us, having me at least to be part of this session. It was amazing talking to you guys. I will give it back to Ian to close the session.
Thank you, Minaam. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, Minaam. I thought that was a really enlightening and fascinating conversation, actually. And I think it's very clear from that the role that the IAB needs to play going forward. And although, as we've discussed in some of our task forces, we're not that JIC that you refer to, I think we can certainly make a significant inroads into creating a viable out-of-home, or at least programmatic out-of-home industry through some of those standardization conversations, through the education that you talked about, Layan, etc. And really, this call was part of that journey. So I encourage everyone who's on this call who's not part of that task force to reach out and join us. We meet every 2 weeks to address some of the challenges and opportunities that this market faces. So thank you very much for making your time available as the panelists, to Minaam, to Henrietta, Layan, and Dom. Really enjoyed that discussion. And thanks to all those who stayed throughout the discussion, and obviously reach out to us for further discussions on this topic over the course of the rest of the year. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week.